What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Struggle to Strength podcast, your source for real life application on how to turn your struggles into strengths in all things mind, muscle, and money. Let's face it, y'all. Most of us feel like we probably work too much. I know I do, and Travis does. And we were just talking about how much of an issue that can become in our lives. I think working your ass off is kind of just like a part of American culture. And I think in a lot of cases, it's to a toxic level. And I know this goes worldwide. So my question is work-life balance a priority for you? Or is it a problem for you? Is there such thing as work-life balance for entrepreneurs? Does the word balance even exist? Is that even a real thing?
I don't know.
This episode, we're going to answer that question. We get to talk to Jan Broders, who dangerously passed the work-life balance line and suffered some serious consequences. This man had some physical ailment. He just passed out one day, and it took him months to recover. And we don't want that to happen to you. So today, we have Jan on to talk about 5 tips for entrepreneurs to manage their work-life balance, their stress management, how to avoid burnout, how to redefine success, and find your calling. This was an incredibly helpful episode for both Travis and I. We know you're going to enjoy it, so stay tuned, listen to the end, and enjoy. We will talk to you soon. Jan, I'm really interested in your life story. It sounds like you've kind of been through a lot. I think Travis and I, we both agree, and we've kind of talked about this with other guests, is that like we have these moments in our life that kind of change us. For some people, they're rock bottom moments. For some people, they're massive adversities that we face. And for some people, they're health related consequences or issues. So I'm curious, both for myself and for the listeners, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story, kind of who you are, how you got to where you are today, and why you're here talking to us about, how to create balance and manage stress more effectively in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So, today I call myself executive life coach. So what we don't really do is like executive coach in the sense of helping people find out strategies and be better at business. The people I work with, they are good at business, or they're successful. But what I help them with is really balance that with a healthy way of living and de-stressing, being able to decompress, spend time with their family, all those things. I think that's the biggest struggle for the people I work with. They're more successful than I am, to be quite honest. So they've achieved amazing things that I probably will never achieve, like selling companies for 200 million or things like that. I hope one day I will do that, but let's be realistic. I probably won't. Right? So crushing anybody's dreams. No, but it's like those types of people, right? And so I lived that fast lane life though for some time, and I was really successful in the hospitality management realm. So did my hotel training, then went to university for hotel management, then went into one of those programs that built you up to be a general manager of a 5-star hotel within a few years. And I was supposed to run a hotel by the age of 30. So that's really young, managing a few hundred people and all. And well on track, everything's fine. And at the time I was doing revenue management in Prague, Czech Republic. It was my 9th country by the age of 28. And I was working, taking the tram to work. That's what you do in Prague. Really nice. Super tired though, because we worked all weekend. And then as I walked through the hotel lobby, and again, it's all marble, it's 5-star, it's luxurious, everything's perfect. But I collapsed in the middle of that place, like quite literally in the middle of the hotel lobby, and physically collapsed. And there were two really sort of distinct or funny moments in that. One was I had to take off my tie, which for me always was the symbol of success. When somebody had asked me right after high school, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be successful. So what does that mean? I want to go to office with a tie and be like important. And I never reflected life that much. I just thought I'd become a general manager. And so I was really unreflected at the time. And so I had to take off my tie because I couldn't breathe, and people thought I had a heart attack, and they called the ambulance. By the way, I don't know if in the US you do those first aid courses when you get your driver's license. You have to do like first aid course. Is that a thing as well? And usually they tell you like, don't bend over, like talk from above to the person laying on the floor. It's like, it's not something you should do. You should be like on eye level or so. And I was wondering, why? I mean, I can do that, but why should I do this? And I was laying there, people were just standing around me and just like 10 pairs of eyes looking down on me. I thought, that's why.
Yeah,
that's what they tell you. That's what they tell you in this first aid course. It's really uncomfortable. They're just staring. Oh man, that doesn't look good. Or they're saying things like, it's rush hour, the ambulance will take forever. Right?
Oh no.
Like, what? And so in hindsight, it's a bit funny, but at that moment, obviously, it wasn't for me. And then the next thing was, this really distinct thought came up that said, okay, either you're going to die right now or everything's going to change, but both is better than what you're doing right now. And that was really weird because I thought I had figured it out. I really genuinely thought I was well on track to living an amazing life. I thought I was living an amazing life at the time. And in that moment, for the first time, I realized that I wasn't, right? That so much was going wrong, that I may have the title and success, but I was unhappy. My partner, my girlfriend, was super unhappy. Hadn't talked to my family in months. My mother was in Africa. I didn't even know she was there. It was just totally disconnected from any social context. And I hadn't talked to my best friends in months. And so I thought just because I had this amazing job and this big title and had lived in 9 countries and all, I was doing well, but I wasn't. I was emotionally, I was a wreck. Yeah, and it all sort of came out at that moment. And my body told me it was time to stop or sort of reassess where I was going, just because the body probably told me long before, but I never listened. And I think many of us can relate to that. The body really gives us signs and we are willing to listen, but few of us really do. Yeah, and then the signs become stronger and stronger, and sometimes they have to become massive before you listen.
Yeah, I think if we pay attention a little bit closer to what our body is telling us and what we need rather than what we want, then we can listen to those things. But every now and then, I'm like you, where in my life I've had situations like that where I just wasn't paying attention, and my body told me, "Hey, it's time to stop." But I'm also interested in this whole concept that you had identified success as a career path, a position, a look. And now it sounds like success is leaning more towards, having closer relationships with the people in your life and, having balance in your life and happiness. What was it like shifting that perspective?
Yeah, it was incredibly hard because I had no idea I was in that place. That was the weirdest thing, right? If well, I'm not so good at math, but I'm aware of it, and let me find some books and study. Okay, that's it's still hard to study math, but you sort of know what to do. But I just didn't know I was there. I had no idea that there was another way of living. Right? If you're not good at math, you're not good at math. But there are people who are good at math. But I didn't even know I sucked at life. Yeah, right. I didn't even know that. I thought I was the king of the world, and so that was quite tough just to realize that. To be like, it was really humbling in that sense. I was like, oh my God, I'm not as amazing as I thought I am. And one really interesting story. Again, it was just funny moments following that incident. So I went back to Germany for 2 weeks. I took like 2 weeks off. They said, take 2 weeks off and you'll be fine, right? I thought so back then too. So I went back to Germany, and so I'm from Germany originally, worked in Czech Republic, went back to Germany, and I couldn't stay home alone at my dad's house because my mom was gone. I was at my dad's house, and I got panic attacks on the highway, in the supermarket, on the bus. So I was like a baby again. I couldn't get my own food, and they didn't have things like Uber Eats back then. It was just like, okay, you need to go to places to get something to eat. And so my dad and his wife, they said, well, we booked this retreat. It's like healing fasting. They do this a lot in Germany, like in spring and fall. You don't eat for a few days and clean your body, like a cleanse, and sort of spiritual. And I always thought it was super weird. But they said, well, you're coming with because we booked this thing. We want to go. And you're like a baby. You cannot stay home alone. So, okay, I'm coming along. And so I went to this place, but obviously I ate because I felt really weak and I didn't want to participate in any of this weird woo-woo stuff. And I was on my high horse still thinking, well, I'm a really successful manager. I'll just sort of chill for a few days and then I'm back in the game. And then I just felt miserable. And I saw all those hippies, like long-haired, mid-50 hippies, dancing naked feet in the grass, doing the tea ceremony, chanting and doing all those weird things, in my opinion. And said, oh my God, they're so lame. I hope this is over soon. And then after a few days, I realized like they are so happy and they haven't eaten for 3 days. And this one guy just does a 10K in the morning, right? It's nothing. Then they go dancing. They're all just happy and have so much energy without eating. And there I'm sitting just depressed and sad and lonely. And it's like, oh my, I have not figured it out at all. They have. Right. And then that sort of, again, was a humbling moment. It's like, okay, let me sort of see, maybe they have something I don't know. Right. And that was the moment, I'm not good at math. I'm just realizing that, and they are. Let me sort of see what's out there. And then I did a session with one of the retreat hosts. I don't even remember her name. And she went led me through this like visualization, guided meditation, whatever it was. And I felt like the sun was shining inside my body. It was amazing. I was, oh my God, I've never felt this way. And I've never, ever felt this way. And I thought, I didn't even know what to do now. And then I did a 10K. Then I went on a bike for 2 hours because I didn't know what to do with all that energy. It felt so uncomfortable because I was just used to being drained and tired and exhausted and stressed. And all of a sudden I'm feeling this whole new set of sort of energetic values. I don't even know how to explain it. And I didn't know what to do with it. It was really, really weird. And I said, oh my God, this is amazing. And then this sort of high-performing mind kicks in again. Oh, wait, that's an amazing tool. Let me use this tool, and maybe I manage to be a GM by the age of 29. Maybe I can outpace the others if I take those amazing tools now. So I'm thinking, I'm still in that weird self-destructive mindset in a way. It's like, okay, let me go back to Prague, meditate every day. I'm going to kick ass even more than before, right? So I go back to Prague, meditate in the morning, get up at 5, meditate, go for a run in the middle of the winter. It's like below 20 in Celsius, there's like 10 Fahrenheit or something, super cold. And so by the time I go to the office, I'm exhausted because I have this half day of supposedly really good routines, right? And the same thing happened again in the afternoon. I got panic attacks. I started crying. And yeah, I left the hotel and never came back. Yeah, but it was really interesting that I needed this other moment of, oh, I can use this to my advantage, right? Really, really weird. Yeah, and then this big journey started really of deep introspection, like self-reflection and therapy and coaching. And I tried out everything really there was and got really, really interested in that world because I found it so amazing. It was like this whole new fantasy land I'd never heard of. I never heard of any of it. And I didn't even know it could feel that amazing. I was just totally hooked. And it was a really, really fun journey. And yeah, that's sort of how it all started and progressed.
What caused you to like collapse and started having panic attacks? Do you think it was more like was it more like a physical kind of like blockage or issue? Like, were you like just super dehydrated, way too many like stimulants, not enough sleep, like over, or was it more of like a kind of like, I don't know, mental, spiritual, existential blockage, as in like you're grinding at something that's just really not making you happy and you're getting like fake happiness from external validation and that's wearing away at you? Like, because, you could think about multiple things. It's like, if you're having like a gram of caffeine a day and not sleeping and your heart your heart is just like, I'm done, and you collapse. That's kind of one thing. But, there's also the serious like existential stress of just like grinding your ass off doing something that you just straight up don't like. You maybe even don't even realize that you don't like it. So I'm curious, like, what kind of end of the spectrum you were on? Yeah,
totally on the second one. And I think to me, really, like I have the saying that burnout is what you get when you live someone else's life. That's what I believe. It's not so much, well, you don't sleep, but I think still, if you're really, really passionate about it, you probably, there's still enough joy, or you find ways to sort of compensate that in some way, or you sort of collapse, but you get better after a while. But this was like a deep, probably more crisis, spiritual, emotional crisis. Yeah, I really wasn't living my life. Right? I'm not saying that hotel manager isn't my way, and I still probably would enjoy that a lot. But the way I interpreted that role, or I interpreted life in general at the time, really wasn't who I am. And I think that's just super, super draining to be constantly living someone else's life, upholding like a mask or so that is not you. It's just draining, and it sucks the life out of you.
Yeah, it can be exhausting. And I think a lot of times you don't realize, like you said, you don't realize that you're doing that until you get a wake-up call. So I'm curious, we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to the podcast, a lot of people who are very dedicated to a specific craft, whether it's fitness, entrepreneurship, business development, a lot of social media podcasting. How do you avoid that burnout? How do you become more self-aware, and how do you manage the stressors of your life in order to, be a more productive, more efficient, better human being with a better path that's more aligned with you? What are some tips that you have around those things?
Yeah. So one thing I always love starting with is to even identify what stress feels like for you. Right. So I think we speak about this. It's this one thing. Oh, I'm stressed. Yeah, but what does that even mean? Right? What is stress? It's the same with burnout. Oh, I'm so burned out. I can't take it anymore. And then I know tomorrow morning after a good night's sleep, you're good again. That's not burnout. That's just you're tired. Right. And but burnout, like that's you're just completely done. Right. So anyway.
Yeah, let's define those. I think that would be a good starting place. Like what is stress? What is burnout? And yeah.
So to me, really, like burnout is oftentimes this is like true burnout always is associated with depression, right? It's like an exhaust. Like in German, the term would be exhaustion depression. Right? You're so exhausted that you fall into depression, and like the last, well, hopefully it's not the last for that person, but the last stage is suicidal thoughts, right? Hopefully the person comes back from that. It is not the last step, but that is like the ultimate form of burnout. And depending on the model, but it can be like 12 steps to burnout or so. It's like one doctor defines it. And we are pretty much all at 4 or 5 or so. It's all just normal. Oh, I'm trouble falling asleep, right? It's just normal. If you talk to 10 people out on the street, probably 8 will say, yeah, I have trouble falling asleep and I use CBD oil and it's better now. It's like, I don't know. It's like, I haven't found a zebra who uses fucking CBD oil to fall asleep. That's not a normal natural condition, right? It's like, no, you should be able to fall asleep. Right? The same as, I just get a glass of wine and then I'm good. Like, no, okay, cool, but that's not your natural state of being.
It's a crutch.
Okay. Yeah. It's so poor zebra. I didn't mean to diss the zebra, but so
no offense to zebras.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if anybody's really emotional about zebras. It's like a zebra loving podcast or something. Yeah. No, but so that's burnout. That's like complete exhaustion. All right. And I think really the tragic thing is that we are all somewhere, we're not close to it, but we're somewhere in the middle of it and we're not even realizing it. Right. So, and that's to me, it's like stress symptoms. Stress really being by definition is just a response to some stimulus, is stress. Right. So we talk about stress like the negative bit, but really it's just a stressor, whatever, like a lot of work or loud noise, and then you have a response, right? That's the stress. But we definitely, like we talk about the negative side. Oh, it's the uncomfortable. I feel nervous or so, right? That's what we see as stress. And we all have our own symptoms, in my opinion. Like you will experience stress different than I will. And I think it's very important to become aware of that. So we even know, oh, I feel stressed. Right, I'm moving into that sort of negative direction, and so what I would start with is pay attention to what does stress feel like, what are symptoms, and you can do this really easily, like 4 dimensions. What is emotional indicators? What are mental indicators? What are behavioral indicators? And physical indicators. So you can think, okay, my back hurts, right? That's like a typical sign. If I'm just like overworking, I'm just worried about something, my shoulders get tight. Oh, okay, cool. So next time those shoulders get tight, it's time for you to take a pause and reassess what's going on, right? For another person, it might be headache, or it might be the feet hurt. A few people have that, but whatever it may be, or it could be mental, lack of concentration, or memory loss, things like that, or emotionally, I snap at my children, right, for wanting to have 2 ice creams instead of 1. It's like, how can you have 2 ice creams? That's a bit of a harsh reaction for a child asking for 2 scoops of ice cream. Right? It's a bit disproportionate for what's going on here. So you notice things like that maybe, or behavioral. I started smoking. I smoke more than usual. Hopefully not at all. I start drinking at night. I check my phone more often than I really want to. I'm sitting at the playground with my children. I'm checking LinkedIn or Facebook really for no good reason, right? Things like this. And if we're really aware of it, I think we're able to intervene and to do something about it. And back in the day, I wasn't aware of any of those things at all, right? I was drinking alone every single night in my hotel room. And I thought, well, that's just what you do when you're stressed. I don't know. I didn't even think it was stress. This is what you do when you have a lot of work to do and when you want to calm down at night, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not what everybody does, and it's not what I do today. But at the time, that's what I was doing. So I think this is a really good first starting point, looking at what does stress feel like, and there can be a second layer to that. Even in my opinion, you have some of the symptoms show up first, and some show up last. So collapsing in the middle of a hotel lobby is not the first sign. Right. So there's a few signs before that. And at the time, people ask me, so yeah, did you see this coming? And of course, in the beginning, I said, no, I don't know. It's so weird, right? Just collapsing in the middle of the place. And but then thinking back, oh my God, during university, I already sort of felt anxious a lot of times, or I already was withdrawing socially, or I already had this weird back pain all the time. So it started quite early on, years before that, right? It got worse and worse, but I never paid attention to it. So one image I love using is, you can view it as a highway. Let's say you go from Chicago to New York or something, right? In New York, again, nothing against New Yorkers, nothing against zebras from New York. So New York is burnout, right? And you start in Chicago. So there might not even be a sign New York when you leave Chicago. It's just sort of going east, right? And then the closer you get, sort of, small sign, New York in whatever, 500 miles. And then the signs get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And at some point, you're in the middle of Times Square, right? You're there. That's burnout. But there were a million signs before that, and there were a million exits of that highway. If you had just paid attention and said, "Oh wow, I'm going to New York," better not. Let me get off this highway. So I think it's again an exercise of self-awareness, and then being honest with us to actually do something about it. All right. So first thing I want people to take away and play with. And another thing, what I find very helpful and would have helped me a ton back in the day, would be to sort of identify or paint a picture of the stressed version of yourself, right? So you say, well, so I call the stressed version of myself, call him Franz, right? It's like old German name. Okay, it's Franz. So if Franz is active, he behaves in a certain way. He has all the stress symptoms. He does certain things. And, but I can observe Franz, right? I say, maybe there's a deadline or so, or I want to go to bed, but Franz doesn't want to go to bed. Franz wants to work until 2 a.m. for sure, maybe 3 a.m. And Franz says, no big deal. Like you sleep the weekend. That's not big. You have like 2 coffees in the morning, you'll be good. And Franz also says, no, it's way too important. You cannot tell them you'll hand it in a day later or so, right? Franz is just go all the time. But I can sort of distance myself from Franz by naming him and by painting a picture around this person. And so I can sort of play with that a little bit.
Yeah, that's great, because I've definitely felt like that, where it's like kind of taking on another personality almost, where you just like,
you got your own Franz.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely like has 3 times as much caffeine than I normally do. There's a bunch of different things.
And it can become quite humorous, right? It can be like, if you give him a name, so sometimes you say like, oh, it's Jan the barbarian or something, or it can be Franz, right? You can, whatever you want to choose. And you say, oh my God, like, what is he thinking even? That's insane. It's just, today, it was funny enough, today I was on a call with one of our team members, and with this new project we're planning. And of course, Franz still is quite active, right? It's just part of the personality. So I have to rein him in every once in a while. And I said, no, we can do it like by next Monday or something. And she said, no, no, we can't. It's like, we can't? No. Oh yeah, you're right. But Franz, like, he still wants to dictate sometimes, right? There's still that side sometimes that I'm able to manage him better. Yeah.
I like separating the two. I think that like you mentioned, that really separates you from yourself and gives you the opportunity to look at yourself in a third person. And so once you identify that, for example, like Franz is being really active, you're like, okay, I know this is not Jan, this is Franz. What do you do then? I imagine at that point you're overly stressed. You can identify some things that need to be changed. How do you manage that stress? What are some tips that you have in order to do that, or to sort of just work through that? Your mental health tips, maybe.
Yeah. I think there's like 2 ways to go about it. I think one is purely behavioral, in the sense that you maybe have a set of fundamentals that you live by. You say, okay, I do a meditation in the morning, I do my workout, maybe I go to nature twice a week, and I don't eat crappy food, and sort of like the fundamentals that you sort of keep in your life, and probably you won't ever get super stressed, or you have some mechanisms to balance it out. But still, in my opinion, it's purely fundamental, purely behavioral, and it won't really ever change so much. You will still again and again encounter those moments. So, but still, I encourage people to do all those things, right? It's like, okay, please go to nature a few times a week, please meditate, please work out, all those things. That's amazing. The other thing really is to then discover what Franz is really about. Okay, 2 questions amazing to ask would be, okay, Franz, what are you afraid of? and what do you really, really want? Right. And then, oh, okay, we're now going like one level deeper, and we really discover what's the fear behind those things, and why we think we need to overachieve all the time, and why we think we're not afraid, we're not allowed to do pauses, and why we think, oh, I can only take a pause when I've achieved something, and like all those things. All of a sudden, you sort of enter the world of beliefs or so. And I think that's where the goal then is. If you change those, begin to change those, it's still amazing to go to nature and all, but you don't need that so much to balance out your shitty behaviors. It's just amazing to go to nature, but just not, oh, I just need to go to nature, otherwise I freak out. Right? So you're no longer there, but yeah.
I think there's like there's a really good kind of correlation between like the mental and the physical. One quick note, pause real quick. I think your mic is making some noise hitting your shirt. So if you just kind of like hold it up like that a little bit, that'll be good. Yeah. Okay. Appreciate that. But yeah, I think there's a really good correlation between like the physical and mental. And I don't know, it reminds me like a lot of like fitness as well, where it's like, if you're overweight and you really want to like lose weight, it's like, it's kind of, I don't know, there's like the two sides of it that go hand in hand. It's like, it could be something as little as like start drinking a gallon of water a day. You feel hydrated, you're like accomplishing that little thing. And then you start like doing other things. And then you start to notice like the changes in your body, and you start to realize like, oh, I could actually become this fit person. And that like solidifies, the habits. But yeah, I think that it's similar to that, because this is something that I've gone through a lot myself recently, where I was kind of on the same track. I feel like I'm very, there was a lot of like, stress going on, and it's just like little things like, like the amount of caffeine that I'm having in a day, for instance. I've noticed that if I go past a certain threshold, everything else starts to kind of like crumble a little bit, where it's like, if I'm having too many like stimulants, it messes with my like mentality, it messes with my sleep. I start to feel like more and more exhausted and burned out. And it's like that one little habit, like I have like a habit tracker on my wall, where it's like, I have, I've slowly been like, okay, I go from like 3 cups down to like 2.5, down to 2 over like a span of like, I don't know, months. Cause it's like you're addicted to caffeine. But I've noticed that like that little thing, I've kind of found like a threshold where that one habit kind of affects everything. There's like, and it's something that I wouldn't have thought of. It's like, I'm just having coffee, it's not that big of a deal, but it's definitely, it affects like everything else. So it's interesting. Yeah. There's kind of like, everything's like interconnected in that way, I feel like.
I love this bit, what you're mentioning, one thing I do with some clients is this like fundamental bit. It would be more of a like don't do list probably, right? Rather than, oh, drink a gallon of water. There also is a don't do list of don't drink 3 cups of coffee, right? And it'd be interesting to track like different things in your life. Let's say movement, time in nature, meditation, caffeine intake, listening to music, spending time with your partner, with your kids, whatever it may be, all those things that you feel, oh, they have an impact in my life. And then sort of grading the day, maybe system 1 to 6, 1 to 10, whatever it may be. And you will notice, oh, some of these fundamentals have a bigger impact on my well-being than others, right? Maybe for me, it's time in nature. Like when I'm in nature, I don't care what else happens that day, right? I spend 2 hours in nature, I'm good. For you, it may be, oh, not more than 2 cups of caffeine or something, right? Of coffee. So I think we all have things that we can leverage more, some things that are more important. And then, of course, we want to absolutely make sure that those happen, right? And they're different for each one of us. I think that's, again, super important to play around with that and discover, because it's super individual. Time in nature may not be as important for you as it is for me, right? But what I've mentioned earlier, I think that is really interesting to discover who Franz is, what he's afraid of, what he really, really wants. And then we sort of uncover those hidden motivators that cause us to have sort of self-destructive behavior, right? Then we don't need to regulate it so much anymore, because hopefully it does not occur in the first place, right? Maybe the caffeine intake will stop on its own. You don't have to like put willpower into it anymore, because whatever is the underlying reason for you doing that, you're transforming it. Right, that's the ideal case.
Yeah, I think that's a valuable practice, and something that I hope our listeners take to heart is, identifying the habits of the person that you want to become and being aware of that. That self-awareness is really important. And then you can kind of shift and guide yourself towards where you want to be, towards Jan, away from France in this case. And Jan it sounds like, has a better idea of what success truly is, whereas France has this idea of what he thought success was. So I think the last thing I want to ask you is about redefining success. How should we redefine success to understand who we truly are, what we truly want, what Jan wants, not what France wants?
Yeah, I think that's like, what does success mean to you? I think it's one of the most powerful questions we can ask ourselves. And I want to encourage everybody to ask that question for different parts of your life, because by default, by the society you grow up in the Western world, at least, we would automatically go into business, finances, status, all those things, right? If we think of success, that's what we talk about. Maybe if you're really in the fitness sort of space, you have maybe, I'm successful at that or so. But the first thing really that comes to mind is money, business, status, all those things. And but there's success in family life, right? There's success in parenting. There's success in health. There's success in spirituality. And in the end, it just means, okay, what does it mean for me to be good in that area, right? How do I want to be in that area? So that'd be an amazing question to ask. What does success look like in each of the areas of my life? And to me, really, I define it as being me, right? That's when I feel successful. So, okay, am I really being me? Am I really authentic in that moment? And I just aim for that as much as I can. I'm not like always, sometimes deviating, obviously, because there's something coming the way, or right, France is sort of taking over here or there. But I just want to be really, really me. I want to be the most authentic self that I can be. And in my experience, then those other things follow, like financial success or so, which is really funny. France thinks that's totally counterintuitive, and no, it won't follow, and you have to like push harder and put better strategies in place and all. But Jan has discovered that if he's really authentically him and just follows what's true to him, then those amazing things happen, which I never thought they would. But that's how I define it for myself, and I deliberately want to take it away from all those other markers, especially financial also, because that's what got Franz so stressed out. Right? Yeah. That's the world he so believes in. I still love it. I still obviously love having money and having that success, but it's not the only definition that I have.
I think that's beautiful. And I in the health and fitness world, we kind of think of this the same way. People come to us, they want to lose weight. And so they think, I have to eat less and move more to lose weight. And you do that for long enough and you just become resistant. And when we just focus on getting healthy, then you end up losing weight. But a lot of times the things that you do to focus on getting healthy don't make sense to your weight loss goal. Sometimes getting healthy means eating a little bit more food. Sometimes it means training less. Sometimes it means just focusing on getting a good night's sleep and eating foods that digest well, even if they might not be the quote unquote chicken, rice, and broccoli super healthy meals that you think you're supposed to be eating. So it's a means to an end. And sometimes it doesn't make sense, but if you focus on what's important, and in this case, it's what truly makes you happy, what truly makes you yourself, your most authentic version of yourself, then everything else follows. And so it's this weird lie that we tell ourselves that in order to achieve financial success, we have to be France. But that's not true. And so I think this was a really valuable conversation, Jan. And I think, a lot of people, it's something that a lot of people need to hear. We've talked about how to identify when you're stressed and how to manage it. We've talked about how to identify what burnout is, when you're burnt out, and what to do about it. We've talked about some mental health tips here and there, how to define success and how to give ourselves a way to assess ourselves from a more third-person perspective and almost give ourselves an alter ego to identify who our authentic self is. Are we moving in that direction, or are we still telling ourselves the lies that Franz was telling. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this knowledge with us and just your experience and how you've come to where you are today. This was really valuable for me. I know it's going to be valuable for a lot of our listeners. I guess what I would love to finish off with is just, one, I know our listeners are going to want to learn more about you, find you and who you are, where you're at. So I would love you to give yourself a little bit of a plug, your Instagram, your social media, website, whatever that may be, but also just some, you've passed on so much knowledge and so much wisdom, just some final words of wisdom or words of advice for both Travis and I and for our listeners, I think would go a really long way.
Yeah. Okay. Those two things. Yeah. So janbroders.com is the best place. It's my website to get in touch. The only social media I do is LinkedIn. So that's another place to connect. And really just shooting over a message would be amazing, and having a conversation. I'm really interested in having those conversations. I don't create much content, anything. I just have conversations with people. And final words, really, like the one thing I have this, I also teach at university. I'm like a visiting professor at 3 universities. And the first slide that I show them is, before I give any content and any like factual knowledge, is be the best at being you. That's what I want them to take away, because then they will figure out like whatever else they need to learn in university. And I think that's like, if you make this your life's mission or so, you'll be good. Because again, I said in the beginning, a burnout is what happens when you live someone else's life. So if you're the best at being you, you're well safe from burnout.
Yes, I love that. And that reminds me of a Frida Kahlo quote of, she says, "I am my own muse. I am the subject I know best, the subject I want to know better." So if we can all just be our own muse, if we can be the best that we can be at being us.
Exactly.
I think that's a wonderful place to start. And as counterintuitive as it may seem, it's a wonderful place to start. So Jan, I really appreciate you, man. I love your story. I love what you're putting out into the world. I'm sure it is coming back to you in amazing ways. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing this with our listeners. So thank you for coming on, and thank you to everybody who's tuned in for another episode of the Struggle to Strength podcast. We will see y'all next week.